today or die.
Hello and welcome. I am so glad you're here. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. Please share the podcast and help us grow and reach women who are aspiring business leaders and entrepreneurs. Today, I am so excited to delve into the career journey of Brenda Bridges, founder of Bridging Divorce Solutions, LLC, and creator of the trademarked Informed Mediation process. She's going to share the secrets to her success and intimate details about her life, loves, and rise to the top. This is the Empowered Career Woman podcast, broadcast from the Whitfield Media Group studios in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The Empowered Career Woman is proudly presented by Medicare Misty. Medicare Misty is a real person who can help answer your Medicare questions. Get real help from her team at MedicareMisty.com. And I'm your host, Lisa McCluskey, and now let's podcast. Brenda, as I mentioned, is a certified divorce financial analyst, a mediator, a certified divorce coach. She helps people navigate one of life's most difficult transitions with clarity, confidence, and calm. She created the Informed Mediation process, which is trademarked, and a trained collaborative divorce professional. She formerly served as the president of the Illinois Association of Collaborative Professionals, but now she's based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and she is working to expand access to collaborative divorce in the region. Drawing from both personal experience and professional expertise, Brenda guides clients to make smart financial and parenting decisions without the court, the chaos, or the costly mistakes, so your family can reshape their future with respect and intention. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm excited to be here this morning talking with you.
Yes, I'm excited to explore your career journey. We thoroughly enjoyed your episode on mediation and collaborative divorce that we did for the Silver Divorce podcast. So now we get to learn about the person behind all of that strategy.
Yeah, I look back and it's a very windy road.
Well,
that got me here.
Most careers are, and that's a good thing. We want people and young women, aspiring leaders, to know that the road will be windy. Oftentimes when people are speaking and they're speaking about their careers, they only go into the highlights, all the great things they did. And they don't necessarily tell about the hard times or what they went through. So
I agree. And I think there's also a beauty to the freedom of like, I will tell my daughter, do the things you want to do. And it's not this like fluffy woo-woo, follow your bliss, but it is be in tune with yourself, because you're going to grow and change, and what you want when you're 20 versus when you're 23 versus, and she's still young, but when you're 30, when you're 40, your life is going to shift. You're going to grow. You're going to learn. You're going to want to do new things. Allow space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not reasonable for people to know exactly what they want to do and be when they're 20 years old.
Or maybe tomorrow.
Right, or tomorrow. I agree with that. Well, let's delve into your career. And first, let's start with where you went to school and what you majored in.
I went to school at Michigan State University. I majored in advertising. I applied to all my schools in engineering because I was a good math science person, score-wise. And, this was in the 80s, and if you were going to do something important, you were going to go be an engineer. And right before I went to college, I was like, no, I just can't. I can't. That's not my heart. So I switched to advertising. I went to Michigan State. I moved to Chicago after graduation with no job. I had a cat and a U-Haul full of stuff and one friend that I knew in Chicago. And then I started looking for a job, and I got so lucky. I got a job at the company's name was Hal Riney and Partners, and they are no longer around. But at the time, they were a really hot advertising agency, and I got a job as a receptionist.
Wow, straight out of college,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and you got to start. I call people like that bootstrappers. They start at the lowest point.
The lowest point.
The lowest point.
Yeah, and I was a receptionist for about 3 months.
Yeah.
And then I moved up to a secretary, and then I moved up to an account coordinator, and so on and so on. But one of the really good things was I got to see all the things that went on, and it was really kind of on-the-job training, learning what all the different pieces and parts did in the advertising agency, getting to learn a lot of the people, where if I had started in a big agency in a department, I wouldn't have had that experience. So I consider myself really lucky. And it was kind of Mad Men when I started there.
Is that right?
It was. And it was just a really exciting, fun thing to do in my 20s. And I was really dedicated to it. I was in account management. I thought my minor in college was graphics, and I thought I was going to be an art director. And then when I actually saw what an art director did, it's like, I really want to do this business management part of it. So, and client service as account management. So I moved into that, and I just kept moving up the food chain. Ended up at a different agency. Years later, I stopped, I took a break, I rehabbed a house, and then went, oh no, for about a year. And then went back to work at a different agency. And it was retail, so it was an entirely different experience than what I had done at Hal Riney, which was much more big brand, like Blue Cross and Anheuser-Busch and whatnot. And it was just, how do I say it? Like, you mimicked or mirrored your client at that time in how they operated their business. And retail is driven. So it was not unusual for the clients to be in at 6 o'clock in the morning and calling you. So I was in at 6 o'clock in the morning taking their calls, or we'd be editing commercials or re-editing commercials to ship out at, midnight on Friday night and send them out by satellite Saturday morning to the markets they needed to go to. So it was a different kind of experience, but that's where I got my first management experience. I had a team of about 17, was the biggest at one point, at a pretty young age.
So how did you end up transitioning into the legal aspect of what you're doing now?
So like I said, it was a journey. So I was in advertising, and then I started freelancing and having a family and going to school, kind of all at the same time. So time-wise, the way it worked was, like I said, it was pretty hard driving advertising. And truth be told, I got fired from my last job because new management came in and had a guy who he wanted to replace me with, who was his friend from his last agency. So I was fired from that job. Side story on that, the new guy came in promising he would bring accounts they never got, and that agency then went out of business. So I look at it rather karmically sometimes.
Yeah, that happens a lot when new people come in an executive level position. They want to bring in their own people, and so suddenly you might have been a high-flying performer, but they're finding fault with everything that you do, or they're trying to make your job really hard to push you out.
And it was a true test for me, and I look at how my clients responded to me, kind of with, oh no, this can't happen to you, we need you, we want you. Overall, it was a positive. Everything is, right? It's a learning experience. Right. So that was a learning growth experience. But then I decided I wanted to switch careers and move into education. So I started working on my master's degree in education for special education. It was then called behavior disorders. And I started working on that, and then I got pregnant with my first child. And I was freelancing in marketing for another advertising agency. So I finished over a 5-year span. I had 3 kids. I finished my master's degree, and I started my own marketing company because the freelance position turned into me, as often does again, it was the client saying, oh, I can just work with you directly instead of having this agency, and me saying, oh, I can just bill you directly instead of through them. It was a better arrangement for both of us. Shout out to Mike Sunjan. He was the best client / boss ever in the world. So I spent, 5 years, maybe 7 years with my own marketing company. I had other clients, but he and his company, it was CNA Insurance, was the primary one. And then it became time to say, okay, I've finished my degree. I've had my 3 kids. Now do I move into education? But by that time, my kids were getting older and Mike retired. So I no longer had that contact. CNA said, we would love for you to keep doing what you're doing. Come work here. We're not going to have you as a consultant. And I looked at my kids and was like, I'm not going to, I see that full-time gig, and I know that I wouldn't be able to spend the time with you that I'm privileged to spend. So I'm not going to do that. So it evolved into me shifting to stay-at-home mom for probably 7 years.
That had to be a big transition from you're going to school, you're raising kids, you're working freelance. That required you to juggle a lot of balls and have a lot of things in the air, transitioning to stay-at-home mom.
You're juggling different balls.
Yeah.
So it was. In some ways, it was surprising because in my thought process in making this decision was I want to be around for my kids when they're little. I want to be taking them to their different things. The math I didn't do correctly was there are 3 of them and 1 of me.
Right.
And I can't do all the things that I could do because I had full-time help while I was working. And then when I was no longer working and was in my mommy at home space, I didn't have any help. So it was just a big switch and trying to balance against the freedom I had had before, where our babysitter and nanny could take care of 2 of the kids or get them to their place while I went to dance class with my daughter, or while I took my son to soccer, or while I went to the room mother's meeting. I could still do all that stuff. And then even when I was working, because the freedom of working for yourself meant I could, if I was up at 2 a.m., write the brochure I was working on for them and get it to them before, they were even at the office. So there was a lot of flexibility that went away when I decided to stay home. Wouldn't trade it for the world. Mm-hmm. It was just the best thing ever to be able to be there with my kids during their earlier years.
Right. That's time you don't get back.
No. And then as they got older and didn't need me as much, I switched gears again and I was teaching there. I just wasn't teaching traditionally. I taught gifted classes and wrote curriculums. Okay. So it was stuff like biology you can eat and, little courses through Northwestern University or the Teaching College, National Lewis up in Chicago. So I did do that. And then when they started, just not needing me as much and there was more time, I became a yoga instructor. So I know, right? It all makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? I had always loved yoga. It's the thing I return to, and I'm trying to return to it again now. I find it really, all the things. It's really grounding. It's really good for you. So became a yoga instructor on my path, and I was about 1.5 years into doing that. I was teaching at a couple of studios. And my then husband, who is now my ex-husband, lost his job. And he was by far the breadwinner. And I looked around and went, yoga is not probably going to pay for my kids to go to college. And yoga doesn't have any benefits. And I need to step back into the workforce. So the more traditional workforce. So I became a financial advisor then. So that's when I took a really sharp turn.
Okay.
Or that was a big pivot.
That is a big pivot.
I have a friend, she was like, your friends were watching you and there you are teaching yoga and, suddenly you're a financial advisor. What just happened here?
Yeah.
Like I felt a little bit like that too.
And you didn't want to go back to the advertising world?
I didn't. I felt that I had in many ways aged out. My contacts were no longer there. There's a lot of turnover in that business. And I think part of my challenge at the time was I was very successful very early in advertising. I had people who were much older than me reporting to me. And somehow I saw myself flipped being that older individual reporting to someone in their 20s. And it wasn't appealing to me. And maybe that was ego or fear. I'm not sure. But that was definitely part of the pause in doing that. And I also really like, if you can't tell by my transitions, I really like learning.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was more appealing to me to step into and learn about something new than it was to step back to something I had been doing 20 some years before. And had been out of for quite some time. So yeah, I became a financial advisor. I got my Series 7. I got my Series 65. I believe it was 66. And I had no idea what I was doing other than I liked finances. I had always done our household finances. I did all the studying. And then I stepped into that career. Boy, was I surprised.
I can imagine that would be so different from the creative side that you were working in advertising and marketing to a very black and white side of finance. Were you doing investing in your financial?
Yeah, but I would consider it more, especially that first firm. It was about sales and production.
Okay.
There were quotas. It was, throw everything up against the wall and see if it sticks. It really was just try to sell. I was in meetings. I was in a group where there were 23 individuals, 22 were men, and me. So it was a very, very male-dominant field, especially the group that I was in. And it really was produce, go sell. And I was in meetings where they would match a senior advisor with a newer person. So if the senior advisor I was with, by default a man, because they were all men in my group, if they saw that they weren't going to be able to sell or make money, they would literally get up and leave the meeting.
Really?
Yeah. And they would just say, oh, Brenda will take care of you. Go on. And so I'd spend another hour with this person talking about whatever, all different in all different situations. But they literally would see no money at the end of this rainbow. I'm out.
That's being thrown into the fire.
Yeah. It was thrown in the fire, and it was really disappointing and disorienting because I did buy into and I still do theoretically, having a financial advisor is important. Managing your finances is a really good thing. Too many people are intimidated by it or not supported in it, not educated about it. What really didn't sit well with me was this mode of fear-based selling. And you were taught find their pain point and then basically stick the knife in and twist.
Emotional selling. Yeah.
Yeah. And we are motivated by fear much more than desire.
Absolutely.
So I understand the behavioral aspects of it and the why behind it. It didn't feel good.
No, it's interesting that every person is really a dollar sign. And if it looked like the dollar sign was just maybe one, they would get up and leave. They would stay if there are multiple dollar signs.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't about the relationship with the client. It was about what can the client do for me at the end of the day for those people, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
my modality or my belief, my value system was much more, it's supposed to be service, what you
Right.
can do for them.
And that makes sense because of your background as a teacher and in yoga, you're thinking more about being a service to the people that you're working with.
Yeah. So I stayed there 4 years and I learned, I observed, I learned, and I would say I learned as much what I don't want to do, be, as
Yeah.
I learned what to do and be.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the lessons aren't rainbows and unicorns.
That's right.
They aren't all like, oh, here are all the good things I aspire to. It really was, well, my eyes are pretty wide open here.
Yeah, sometimes the worst experiences can end up being the best experiences in terms of teaching you. So you went 4 years from that.
I went 4 years in that. During that time, I got divorced. So about a year and a half after I started as a financial advisor, my husband came home and said he wanted a divorce. And I was taken aback. It wasn't what I expected at the time. And yet I recognized we didn't have a good marriage. Mm-hmm. We didn't, all the things, we didn't communicate well. We didn't share a lot of experiences. My world was the kids and then moving towards work. His world was work. So we didn't have a lot of crossover. That being said, we started the divorce process. It lasted about a year and a half. It was crazy expensive. It was really angry, and we didn't even go to court. We did a collaborative process, but the way it was managed, I would just say none of us did it well. Since I do what I do now, I can definitely see some of the whys behind that, but I can also see there are so much better outcomes. And because my outcome was so bad and expensive and most of all damaging to my children, still is, that's when I did another tiny pivot and did my CDFA, which is Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. During my divorce, there were some big ticket mistakes. One was worth over $1 million.
Oh.
Yeah, that's bad. Not in my favor.
Right.
And it was just a mistake. The professionals made an error. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a financial advisor and I'm going through this. And I didn't know enough to see that was a mistake. That's what led me to do the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, because then you were really trained in finances of divorce, not just finances. Mm-hmm. And a big part of doing that is helping people not only understand their choices, but to avoid mistakes. So they're not a year or 5 years later going, ruh-roh, what just happened here? Like, this isn't what we planned. So I did that, and I started working in that. It wasn't well supported by the firm I was at. One thing I've found is different broker-dealers or different financial services firms have different compliance and different rules and expectations for who their advisors who are working there. So being a CDFA and being at that firm were not copacetic. So at that time, I switched to another small firm in Chicago that was very supportive in bringing me on. But I was there a couple of years. And what I found was their compliance, even though the people were supportive, their compliance was not supportive of the CDFA work. I couldn't get things approved. I couldn't get communications approved. And if compliance doesn't approve it, you can't do it.
Right.
So I was doing some work there and starting to build a practice, getting more involved in Chicago in divorce finances and in collaborative process. And then I trained to be a divorce coach. Thought behind that was there's this, I don't know what you would call it, mentality that when you're going through divorce, it suddenly switches to a business arrangement. And I don't agree with that. I think that there are so many emotions, whether you're the one who wants the divorce, whoever, you're switching up your life. You're making a lot of big high-stakes decisions. And if you're being told at the same time, just ignore your emotions, put them in a box, and make logical business-like decisions for your finances or your children, I don't think that leads to the best outcome, because often then those emotions, when not addressed, come out sideways. So getting certified as a divorce coach was a way to have the skills set to support people making their financial decisions, also work through emotionally why they're making those decisions, and kind of walk down the what-if paths instead of, being told to make a really quick decision. It really allows people space.
You're giving people time to think through the outcome of those decisions and think through years down the road, or even months down the road, what's the implication of those decisions, and encouraging them to look at the future.
Right.
It sounds like to me.
I think so. And to just have a thought partner who isn't someone who loves them, who is vested in them,
Right.
or someone who is remote and non-attached. It really is having a partner who can share with you kind of what you don't know. Because when you're going through divorce, even if it's your second or third, often things have changed and there are things you don't know.
Right.
So sometimes it's just asking people the questions that they need to think about and then empowering them to make their own decisions based on their knowledge and good information and what they want out of their life. So I did that divorce coach certification, and then kind of wrapping it all together, became a mediator. Did my training while I was still up in Chicago, and then did collaborative divorce training, which is just a different way of walking through divorce out of court with attorneys, but it's a very specific process. So did that certification. So as I said, I like learning. So kind of bundled all of those together and then moved to Chattanooga about 5 years ago, almost exactly 5 years ago now, and began to establish a practice here. And that's when I really shifted from focus being financial advisor to focus being divorce professional. And I moved to a different broker dealer who is really supportive of the process, really supportive of my work in divorce, of my work in divorce. And it just then pieces started falling into place to open up, I think, what for me is the right thing to be doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems as though you've channeled your passion for helping people along with your financial acumen into a business where you can combine both, the best of both worlds. So that's good.
Yeah, it is. And it too is a challenge. And then there's a whole nother space there that I'm sure you hear of a lot. There's the practice of doing my work, and then there's the work of running a business.
Right. Yeah. That's where your business management background, I'm sure, comes into play as well.
It does come into play. I find it was funny. Before we spoke, I was just thinking about it, like really sitting with it. It's just so very different. I think, like in reality, I've been working for myself for 25, 30 years, except I didn't really think of it that way until about the last 5.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, before, when I was working in a company, in an agency, what have you, you're doing your best, and I'm a people pleaser, so I was doing my best to follow the rules of the company, their standard operating procedures, what their guidelines were for their business, and I was a good little doobie doing my job as best I could there, and I was really good at that. And then when you're working for yourself, there's no one telling you. The rules are your rules, and it takes some time, I think, it's taken me a couple decades, right, to go, oh, wow, I really am only in charge of me.
So do you think your work in marketing and advertising helped, propel your business growth?
I do believe so. I think it gives me a different outlook than if I was, I don't want to say just, that's not really the best word. If my focus was my business, my practice, so me, financial advisor, divorce mediator, or divorce coach, or an attorney, or what have you, and the focus is on doing that thing, you still have to communicate what you're doing. You still have to let people know that you're here. And because I'm the only one of me right now in Chattanooga, there's a lot of education and communication necessary just to get the word out that people have this option. And they have it throughout the country. In some places, Chicago being one, there are a lot of people who do what I do. There are people who do it virtually. There are people who are CDFAs in every state, some more populous than others. Here, I just happen to be the front edge of the wave, right?
You're leading.
And there will be others, I'm sure.
Right.
It's necessary. It's a much more sensible way to walk through divorce, to have a financial person doing the financials and a lawyer doing the legal part, and a coach, if need be, helping with parenting if they're trained to support that. So looking at the process and communicating to people, you have choices, there's a different way. To me, it ties in both my sales and marketing background, and it ties in my education background, because there's a lot of education there. And just getting across to people, you have a choice.
And that is so important. I know in going through my divorce, you didn't know what your choices were, and it was more centered on the legal aspects and not necessarily some of the other considerations and walking through that. And you were pretty much on your own, developing your own, here's your own spreadsheet. And, so to have somebody walk beside you when you're going through this emotional turmoil, I could see would be a huge benefit and if it's a very contentious divorce, you have somebody that is working with both, right? You work with both people in the divorce?
It depends on the circumstance. So if I'm mediating or collaborative, I'm a neutral and I work with both.
With both.
And what I love about that is instead of people trying to hide things, we're working with the same data. They get to see the same numbers. So if we're looking at, let's just say, what alimony will do to the parties, and the party who's going to be paying it based on income is like, nope, don't want to, not going to do it. And the other person needs it. When we go back to the numbers, it's so much easier to come to an agreement when the person who's paying can see that they can't afford it and they're going to be okay. We can project out their net worth in, 5, 10, 20 years. And they can then see, even if I pay my former partner this money, this alimony, to make sure they're as intact as possible, I'm still going to be good.
Yeah, and that's so different because it's a difference from being told you have to, go to court and a judge orders, you have to pay this alimony to, let's come to an understanding of what your life is going to look like. If you're paying alimony, you're still going to be okay. It's kind of like when you go to your financial advisor and they look at your 401k and project out to age 99. If you take this much out a year, here's what you're going to still have left if you live to 99. You're kind of doing that from an alimony perspective. And then I would think it would be more palatable and acceptable to the person who's paying.
It puts context to the whole process. It works for asset division, debt division, alimony, also maintenance, spousal support, whatever it's called in your jurisdiction. But it works because it puts context around it. And so often, if there is no context, that's when you get to the sticking points. If someone is fixated on, I need fill in the blank, let's say $20,000 a month. I need $20,000 a month. Well, why? No one, it's just because I do, because that's my number and that's what I do. And I've started working with people at times where that is the position. And then you're like, well, your spouse makes $25,000 a month, which is a significant amount, but how are they going to pay you $20,000 a month? Let's really dig into that and look at it. So a lot of the work is digging into their specific situation. One thing that makes me crazy, if I can bring it up, is when people go to social media and they look for advice as to their divorce, and they'll write a little paragraph or maybe a long paragraph and say, what do I do? And then they get all these responses that say, you have to do this, you should do this, you must do this. Do you? I think everyone's entitled to having their situation treated independently, not cookie cutter. And sometimes it works out really well. Sometimes what people learn when we put it in context is they are not going to be okay. And then they have to make some hard decisions like selling the house or taking their kids out of private school. There's just not enough money to stretch and do all the things they want to do. But at least they're not surprised. And at least then they can figure out which thing gives. Where does it have to give?
Those are smart decisions.
I woke up this morning stressing about a plan. Don't know which one to pick, I might need a hand.
Hi, they call me Medicare Misty.
She'll help help to make the process smooth as whiskey. Don't worry.
We work with several different carriers to make sure your coverage is not limited by a single company. Visit MedicareMissy.com and book your appointment today.
Don't worry. Guarantee you'll be happy.
And it's a lot of the work, and that's what I think I and other CDFAs like me, we're trying to help people, give them that information. So circling back to you, had asked, do I take sides or do I work with a couple? I work as a neutral when I'm working with a couple. I'm not taking sides. They have both the same information. That's the majority of what I do. I also work on litigated cases where I do take a side and I'm an advocate, but then I'm only working for one person and I'm helping their attorney kind of tell a story with their numbers.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about how you came up with your trademarked process, the Informed Mediation process, and tell us a little bit about that.
I would love to.
Yeah.
So working in the different modalities, basically 4 ways you can divorce. You can do it yourself. Sometimes you can't, depending on the laws where you live. You can do mediation. There are all sorts of mediations, many different modalities. We can dig into that if you'd like. There's collaborative process. Those first 3 are out of court. And then there's litigation or attorney negotiated. That's against the backdrop of court. So basically, doing this for many years, I just looked at each one and thought, what is the best? What is the best of the DIY process or kitchen table? What is the best out of mediation? What is the best from collaborative process? What is the best from litigation? And what informed mediation does is kind of pull from that, and it takes the neutrality of mediation. It puts a format to it. So there's a flow. I can give people a chart that says, this is the process we're going to follow, so they know it's not this wait and see what's going to happen next situation. And we bring in the information that they would have in a collaborative divorce or hopefully litigation, but share it with both parties. So they both have the same financial information. We're able to, I had a couple in my office yesterday. We have all their financials. I put them up on a screen in my office, and we start talking about what if you do this? What if you keep the house? In this case, they had 2 houses. What if you each keep a house? Do you want to keep a house? What are your goals? And then we can have those conversations in real time and see the impact of them. And that's really, in a nutshell, informed mediation is out of court with the information. People need to make their own decisions in an empowered way. And then we turn to an attorney and say, here's our agreement. It's written up. It's all the information they need. Please draft it, make it legal, make it appropriate. Make sure that there aren't any errors. I mean, they're doing their job as an attorney, so that's out of my my range of abilities. I'm not an attorney, shouldn't be practicing it, but we give them the attorney the information they need to draft a document that's already decided upon. So they're not acting as advocate, they're acting as document preparer, and then they walk it through the court system. So it's a system where people get the information they need. They get to stay out of court. They have an attorney involved, but doing the legal portion. And it's much faster. It costs much less. And it's just not as acrimonious or angry. So the fallout is, if they have children, even adult children, they're much less likely to be in the center of this process or seeing negative results from it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think not enough people know about that, because in our state, mediation, if it's a contested divorce, is required, but it's a completely different process. It still is somewhat of an antagonistic process. You have your attorney, he has his attorney, and you try to hammer it out in one day with a mediator.
And that's just, it's a different style of mediation. The goal in that mediation is not to be goal-based, it's to get to a settlement.
Right.
And they're feeling under pressure to, let's get this one done.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we're going to court. The goal of the mediation I practice, it's not evaluative. That's the first style. It's more goal-oriented, and I'm really moving towards a newer style called insight mediation, which we could spend a whole hour talking about that. But suffice it to say that it is based on goals and making sure that what is important to both parties is being discussed.
Yeah, it sounds as though it's more futuristic looking.
Yeah.
You're trying to look at what does each person's life look like post-divorce, from the financial aspect, from the parenting aspect, and what's best for the entire family.
And can it be done?
Right.
And they're making the decisions. My job is not to tell them what to do.
Right. And it's still
to help them.
And it's still a legal process because it will be drafted as a legal document. It'll still go to court and get signed. And it's still a legal document.
Right. And the attorneys I work with, they find things in our agreements where they'll call up and go, Brenda, you can't do this. It's not legal in where we live. Like, great. We can fix it then.
Yeah.
So it's like everyone is staying in their lane. Everyone has their role. Finances, family, legal. And then the people end up with a better, more resilient agreement that they understand because they made it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you've been working with people a long time in this divorce process. Have you noticed now that a lot of boomers are getting divorced?
I have.
Have you noticed a change in their expectations for divorce? Do you see more people expecting to go through a mediated process, or is it still as antagonistic?
That's a really good question. And I don't know that I have a good answer because the people who find me self-select. By definition, the people who find me want an out-of-court process where they're the ones making the decisions. And almost every single couple who comes say, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to do this. We want to stay out of court. That's their mantra. So I don't know if there's a tendency towards that because the majority of the people I see are coming to me for that. They're not,
right.
Attorneys will come to me and say, I need your help on this case because they have complex financials and they want me to sort through them or do property tracing or what have you. That's usually coming from attorneys because they're financially, it's out of their scope from a financial point of view. So I'm supporting their case. But the people who come to me directly, they want to stay out of court and they want to dissolve their marriage knowingly with good information.
And they're looking for you. So
Yeah, interestingly, I had someone I've been talking to about collaborative divorce reach out to me last week, and she said, "Oh, I talked to an attorney, and they said collaborative divorce is dying. It's a bad process. They don't believe in it. What do you think?" And I said, "Well, that's curious. Where did they get their information? Are they trained in collaborative process, and have they ever done a collaborative divorce?" And her answer was, "No, she just heard it somewhere." So I looked up a lot of information on collaborative divorce because I didn't want to just say, well, that's not true. I'm like, I better get some backing for this. And collaborative divorce is growing. So I do know that wasn't a mediation stat, but collaborative divorce is definitely growing in this country. It's really strong in Canada, Australia, and England as well. But it's growing. It is not declining.
Well, that was my impression as well from all of the reading I've done for the Silver Divorce podcast, is that collaborative divorce was growing. So I think you're in a good position then.
And I just think it's better for people.
It is. Yeah, it is long term. You know, the divorce is hard on the entire family, as you know. The adult kids get involved and friends and family, and it destroys relationships with the entire family circle. So if you can go through a less traumatic process that maybe preserves some of those relationships in the future, I think even in the most difficult cases where there's been an affair on one side, you know, does that mean the entire family has to stop being a family? Does that mean, you know, former in-laws or cousins or whatever can no longer talk to each other? You know,
I do know, and that's my case. That's why I do what I do. I think the way my divorce played out didn't have to be.
right.
And if I had had the support, or we, had the support that I and others like me are now giving people, it would have impacted truly my children's lives forever.
Mm-hmm.
And mine. And I would probably be able to look back on that whole process and be more proud of the way I walked through it, because there are some things I am so not proud of. Or I look back and like, what was that? Who was that?
Hey, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. What was she up to?
Yeah, I wish I hadn't done some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or said some things.
But some of it is just, it's getting the right support.
It is.
And education and information.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much not good information out here, which I'm so thankful for you and what you do in your podcasts. It's important.
Well, there's a lot of opportunity to educate people. And I think your background in education and communication, advertising is communication, marketing is communication, and then your knowledge is going to be so helpful in helping people. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about female leadership. And you have navigated a lot of powerful business leaders, all the ad agencies that you worked with and in finance. And how did you show up as a powerful person without alienating those people? And how did you manage when there were diverse opinions? We talk a lot about women playing small in the workplace and maybe not offering opinions because they don't want to ruffle those feathers of the men who are getting up and walking out of a room if the client wasn't big enough. Tell me about your style in working in a male-dominated.
I think it's evolved greatly over the years. When I first started and was in advertising, I didn't know I was supposed to be small. I didn't get the memo. No one told me. So I just kind of did what I thought I should be doing. And it was a blissful oblivion in a lot of ways, because I hadn't yet learned to look at myself as different or small or female. I learned that as I worked. So that came into play more, not in education. That's primarily female, right? Mm-hmm. But moving into the financial world, I think the way it played out for me was different depending on the firm I was at. And now I'm independent, so it's a whole nother animal. It was more bringing up questions and being curious when people would do things like, give an example from financial services that I'm pretty sure a lot of women have experienced. You would be in a meeting with a couple, and the financial advisor, generally a male, directs everything they're saying to the male. And the woman is like, would you give me coffee or a donut, please? Honey, sweetie, you don't need to understand this. We'll get to you later. It's that kind of thing. So in those positions or situations, it was when we had team meetings or when we would debrief after, to say to that advisor, like, I'm curious, why did you do that? Did you see what happened there? And just really try to not tell them they were wrong, because putting someone on the defense isn't productive. Mm-hmm. It just makes you get more defensive. But asking, like, sometimes they didn't even know they were doing it. And depending on, some of the advisors are like, yeah, that's where the money is. That's what I'm doing. I'm out. And others are like, wow, I didn't even realize I knew that. Thank you for bringing that up to me. So I wouldn't say it was as much leadership as it was curiosity and noticing when it's happening, and noticing if it was happening to me, like, I'm being treated differently here. Maybe I need to ask the question as to why. Or other people are being treated differently here. Maybe I need to ask why. Mm-hmm. And it didn't always work out the way I wanted it to work out. Like, there was a situation in that first financial firm where I wanted to join. There was a woman in another group, and she was a really good mentor. And I wanted to join her group. And I was told, no, you stay put. You stay where you are. And that's when I started looking for another place to work. And then I resigned, and they said, oh, now you can go work with her. Like, so you didn't take me seriously.
Until
like it
you
wasn't
quit.
exactly. It wasn't important enough until I left. So I don't know if that was an answer. I think less about leadership than I think about authenticity.
Yes. It really struck me when you said sometimes they're just not aware. I think some of the behaviors are so ingrained that they don't give it a second thought. And in a really curious way of asking questions, you're bringing attention to a behavior that makes them think twice about it, but you haven't alienated them in the process.
And I think that's a lot of the work is just shine the light on it. I have another mentor who taught me a lot about being a CDFA. And she's like, your whole job is not to judge. It's to shine the light on it. We're looking at the numbers. We're pulling them into patterns that are understandable. And then we're sharing them. We're shining the light.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that is leadership.
Yes.
Without a heavy fist.
I think so. It's a smart way to do it because that person is really then thinking twice, but they're not. You haven't become their enemy in the process. But it goes back to women are better at, they say we can dance backwards in high heels. And so, no, that's great. Your leadership style over the years, though, it seems like you've been pretty steady with a teaching, leading process. Would you say, or do you think you've evolved over the years?
I've evolved. I'm certain earlier it was just like I had a bunch of people who did what I said, and I said, do this, and they did it. Mm-hmm. That was leadership to me. And that was in the 80s and 90s, and that was also, I think, more of the time. There was no leadership training in my background or experience, so it really was like, okay, see the big picture, make a plan, delegate it. We're going to have a group meeting on Friday, see if you got your stuff done. That's leadership.
Right.
And now I would say it's much, I just come back to curiosity. It's much more difficult for me, and I'm sure this depends on your personality type, to draw people's talents and skills out of them and make them feel supported in doing what their zone of genius work is and figuring out how to fit those pieces together and what needs to be done for the business. For me, it's a constant challenge. There's a lot of brain power that goes into what needs to be done, who should be doing it. Is it space where they're set up to excel? Or am I giving someone something that they just are not equipped to do? And if so, we need to talk about, do we get them equipped to do it? Do they really want to do it? Should someone else be doing it? It's more of putting a puzzle together than it is what I would have been earlier, just the top down.
Top down, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a coach yourself?
Yes.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
What was it, a business coach or was it a personal coach?
All of the above.
All of the above.
So, yeah, I believe strongly in coaches.
Yeah.
Most recently, I've been in a group for it's been 6 years, that is female financial advisors. And it's not about the financial advising. It's about how to build your practice and be authentic and figure out who you want to serve. So I've been in that kind of a mastermind group. I've done coaching with the CDFA group. That's also more of a mastermind. And it's still a group that, like, when you have a challenge, like you see something in a case that, like, this is not my zone. I don't know what to do with this. You can throw it out to the group and get people who are vetted and might know. Let's just say it's military. They work with military pensions. They know them. They're complex. I do not. So it's a resource that I can go to and say, I either need to pull you in or turn this over to you, or is it simple and you can just tell me it's this. I've worked with life coaches. I currently work with someone who is a master NLP practitioner. She's a magical unicorn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I definitely believe in ongoing education, but getting help, just getting someone, if I am stuck or it's their area of expertise and I want to learn more about it, to go get that information from someone who has it.
It's smart.
And
Get
I
help
like
from
it.
others. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can learn a lot and it can help accelerate your career as well.
I agree. And I think that's a big, to your topic of leadership, that's a really important part of being a leader is looking at yourself and saying, where do I need to improve? What do I need to know? Where do I have gaps? And then filling them in.
And those coaches can see the blind spots that you have and help you work through them. That's great. So I wanted to ask a few personal questions then. Who's your mentor? Did you have a mentor or who did you look to for inspiration?
I have rotating mentors. Some of them are, podcast hosts. Definitely a Mel Robbins fan.
Oh, right.
And others, Jay Shetty. And so they're mentors who don't know me, but I know them. Mentors I mentioned, so Robin Crane for the financial services group. She works with she works with men and women now. She started working with women as to how to rebuild the practice so you're not the person in the room who is looking at someone like a dollar sign and trying to scare them into investing with you, but you're really working with them and supporting them. So she's integral in that and helping hone communications. Nancy Hetrick, as a CDFA, she's like the queen of all CDFA knowledge. So she has been a mentor over the years. Those are the big ones.
Yeah, have a variety of mentors, it sounds like, in various aspects of your life.
Yeah, because they're all different pieces.
So if you had to point to one thing that maybe it's a character trait, maybe it's a process that you could say, this helped me to be successful in no matter what I was doing, whether it was advertising, marketing, education, yoga, what I'm doing now, what would that one secret kernel be?
This is counterintuitive, but for me, it's embracing and recognizing failure and then sitting with it and saying, what is my lesson? Like, what was this to teach me? What do I need to do based on what just happened, whether it's big or small failure, and how do I integrate that? Because it's all about it's all about the learning. I don't know, my definition of success has changed so much over the years, and I don't even know, honestly, what it would be today. I could probably bumble on about it, but the most important thing to me is learning and trying to be a better person. And when I mess up or when something I think should work doesn't work, taking a look and going, now what?
That's right. Always being open. I had a boss once who told me if you're not failing 20% of the time, you're not learning. So he encouraged take that risk, stretch, and if it doesn't work out, what did you learn from it? What can you take away from it? So
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. It helped me a lot over the years. And it was interesting when you run into, from time to time, I would have a boss who absolutely, failure is not an option. You knew you weren't going to learn too much from that person. And you better be careful.
Yeah, and you weren't going to innovate and you weren't going to feel comfortable.
You weren't going to take any risk. You were going to take the safe route every time. So, no, I like your outlook on that. So for what you do you see a lot of opportunity in divorce coaching and mediation? Do you see that field opening up for young women?
I definitely do. There's space to come to what I do from so many different careers. I was told, actually, when I did my mediation training, I was told you can't make a living out of being a mediator. It's a nice hobby. And this was from one of the most successful mediators in the Chicagoland area, which is a huge market. And I beg to differ.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can make a living at pretty much anything. And there's a lot of space. And I also think, especially for the style of mediation I do, women are uniquely skilled as listeners and carers to help people facilitate their own ending. I think the hardest thing for women in what I do, as I do it, is to not be as invested as we tend to want to be. Like, you do need to be removed. You need to not be attached to their outcome, because it's their outcome. It's not mine. And I have not walked their walk or lived their life. So I think that's the most difficult thing to learn as you go through it, because, again, as women, I think we carry our experiences. So there can be a lot of heaviness to it. That's a whole nother skill to figure out how you balance that.
That's good advice for somebody who's just starting out, is manage how invested you are in the emotions of what's happening with the couple.
I need to remind myself of that almost every day.
I would see how hard it would be, because you become close to them and you know their stories and how they got to where they are. And I would think it would be very difficult. How do you manage your emotions then? Have you had an instance where you really were conflicted with that?
I've probably had many, but my answer to how I manage it is, it's back to the failure question in many ways. It's like, what do I need to do to improve my management of it? What do I need to learn? How can I be better at this, which is my craft? Mm-hmm. And what needs to change? What in that scenario caused me to become attached? And part of it is learning. This whole curious, I think I mentioned it to you before. There's a program called Curious Mediator that uses insight mediation. And it's very empowering, but part of the teachings are, it's not my decision, it's theirs. How do I help them make their best decision? And once, it's hard to internalize, because my first mediator training was like, how do you get them to their decision? Like, how do you move them down the line?
How do you move them into the square box?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you get them there? And, it was 40 hours of training on how do you get them there? And this is, how do you allow them to get themselves there? And it's a whole different outlook.
That is a different outlook. Subtle, but powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's freeing. It feels better.
Yeah.
It's like, it's their choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's cool. So how do you manage your passions that you might have in your personal life with your demanding business? You're running this business. How do you balance that?
It's an ongoing journey. Right now, what I'm trying to do is, because my tendency, I found, especially moved here in 2020, we all know what happened then, and everyone was on lockdown. So what did I do? I worked on my practice,
Right.
And then it became a habit. And then I wasn't doing things I had before, like exercising or creating or gardening, all the things. And I missed them, and it's not healthy. So I'm trying very methodically to build those back in right now. So I just got off the waiting list for Scenic City Clay Arts. So I'm going to throw pottery, and I've been gardening more and got my paints back out. It really is. And I got my yoga mat back out, which I'm very excited about. I joined an exercise program. I'm really working hard to not work all the time, because I was. And part of me can say it's because it's so important and I'm building a business, but it's not healthy.
Right.
So I'm trying to make that a priority in my day-to-day life.
Just a little more intentional about taking care of you.
Mm-hmm. And
That's
then I'm
good.
better for all the other things.
Right. Absolutely. You're more balanced.
Right.
It helps you to keep that perspective, I would think.
Yes. And centered, and not get caught up in, there can be a lot of turmoil and anxiety and urgency. Mm-hmm. And part of all the learnings is to realize they're allowed to have that, but it is not mine.
That's right.
And if I'm trying to take it off of all the people I'm around, I'm really not helping them or me.
That's right. Good insight.
Hard one.
Yes.
Hard fought.
Yes. When you're dealing with very emotional people going through a really challenging time. So I'm going to ask you a few personal questions.
Okey-doke.
What books are on your bedside table?
Okay. So I thought about this. I tend to rotate, and I usually have a business book, so something to improve my practice. I usually have what would be deemed self-help, I guess, book, and then a fun book. So right now I have Informed Mediation. That's by Cheryl Picard. I have Abundance Now by Lisa Nichols. And I just started Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry.
I have heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I literally downloaded that yesterday. So that's my collection right now.
Very good. And what impact do you want to leave on the world?
I guess my specific work impact would be, as to divorce, I would like people to ask the question when they're told how they have to do it, is it true? I just want people to know they have choices and pick what is right for them, not what they're told they must do. Overall, I would like impact on the world. When I'm gone, I would like people to say, oh, she tried her best and she loved people and her kids were really magical.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. She tried her best and her kids are fantastic. Because
yeah, that's really
ultimately-
what it boils down
right,
to.
It does. Yeah, that is. I love that. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for
Brenda.
having me. It was
It's-
lovely.
You have just a fascinating career, really demonstrates that you can do whatever you want to do
Yes.
and keep learning
Whoever the person listening is, you can do whatever you want to do.
and keep learning.
And keep learning.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so how can we support your work? Tell us how we can find you, reach out to you, your social media, your website.
So social media is Bridging Divorce. My website is Bridging Divorce Solutions. I also have Bridging Wealth Solutions, and I do help people post-divorce with their finances, especially if
okay.
they haven't been the one doing them. Sometimes there's a lot of sorting out to do or understanding. And they can reach out to my office. How to support the practice is, if you or someone you love is facing divorce, either be supported or be encouraged, or encourage them to know their options before they move forward so that they're comfortable, they're picking the best process for them and their family.
That's excellent advice. Well, I thank you for being here. And for our listeners, please join me on the next episode of the Empowered Career Woman podcast. I also ask, please leave a rating and a review, and I welcome your comments and your guest suggestions at empoweredcareerwoman@gmail.com, and visit our Facebook page at emp.career.woman. The Empowered Career Woman is proudly presented by Medicare Misty. Medicare Misty is a real person who can help answer your Medicare questions. Get real help from her team at medicaremisty.com. The rise to the top is not always a straight line. Sometimes the bend in the road is the most challenging, yet it leads us to where we are meant to be. If you are an aspiring business leader or entrepreneur, join us next time as we share stories of women who made it to the top. I'm Lisa, and keep rising.